Have you ever had one of those quiet moments when you look at your life and think, am I somehow behind? You look around and it seems like everyone else has figured something out. A friend gets engaged. Someone you went to school with buys their first home. Another person starts a business. Someone else gets the promotion they have been working toward. And then there is you, still trying to understand where you are going, still showing up, still doing your best. But somewhere in the back of your mind, there is this strange feeling that everyone else was handed instructions for life, and somehow yours never arrived. If you have been carrying that feeling lately, stay here for a little while. There is nothing wrong with you. You have not failed at life, and you are definitely not the only person who feels this way. Tonight, there is nowhere you need to get to. You do not have to figure anything out. We can simply slow down for a moment and talk about that strange period of life when the person you used to be no longer feels quite right, but the person you are becoming is still difficult to see. It can be an uncomfortable place to live in. You have changed, but you do not completely understand how. The things you once wanted may not excite you anymore. The future you imagined when you were younger may suddenly feel unfamiliar. And somehow, you are expected to make important decisions while still trying to understand yourself. People sometimes describe this as a quarter-life crisis. It can happen in your 20s or 30s, but it is not really about reaching a particular birthday. It is more about transition. It is what happens when life begins asking bigger questions than you expected. What kind of work do I actually want? Who do I want beside me? What does success mean to me? Where do I want to live? What matters to me now? And perhaps the most difficult question of all, who am I becoming? When you do not have clear answers, uncertainty can become exhausting. You might spend hours thinking about decisions that seem simple to everyone else. You replay conversations. You question your choices. You wonder whether you should have taken a different path years ago. Maybe you look at your career and wonder if you chose the wrong direction. Maybe your relationships feel different than you expected. Maybe the dreams you once felt certain about have become strangely distant. Some mornings you feel hopeful. Then, without warning, an ordinary afternoon can bring the thought that perhaps you have wasted too much time. And life does not pause while you figure things out. The emails still arrive. Bills still need to be paid. People still ask what your plans are. Everyone keeps moving. Meanwhile, there can be a part of you quietly asking, is this really where I am supposed to be? It is easy to interpret that question as evidence that something has gone wrong, but uncertainty is not the same thing as failure. Sometimes uncertainty is simply what change feels like before you understand it. Think about the moment just before sunrise. The sky is still dark. You cannot see very far ahead. Nothing looks particularly different yet, but the light is already on its way. You simply cannot see it. Your life can be like that too. Just because you cannot see what comes next does not mean nothing is happening. There are seasons of growth that look completely ordinary from the outside. You may not notice the changes while they are happening, You are learning. You are questioning old beliefs. You are discovering what you can no longer tolerate. You are becoming more aware of what you actually want. You are quietly becoming someone different. And much of that work happens where nobody else can see it. Like roots growing beneath the ground, some of the most important parts of your life develop in silence. The problem is that we rarely give ourselves permission to grow quietly. We constantly compare. And now, comparison follows us everywhere. You open your phone and see someone's wedding, someone's new job, someone's beautiful apartment, someone traveling somewhere you have always wanted to visit, someone announcing an exciting achievement, someone showing a life that appears completely put together. And then you look at your own life. Suddenly, everything you have accomplished can feel smaller. This is one of the difficult things about social media. You are constantly seeing other people's visible moments while living inside the invisible parts of your own life. You see their announcement. You do not see their uncertainty. You see the photograph. You do not see what happened before it was taken. You see the achievement. You do not see the years of doubt, rejection, mistakes, and disappointment that may have come before it. Every person has parts of their story that never make it onto a screen. Even the person you think has everything together has moments when they question themselves. They have fears they do not post. They have difficult mornings. They have decisions they regret. They have nights when they wonder whether they are doing enough. You are comparing your complete reality with a small collection of someone else's moments. That comparison will almost always make you feel behind. But there is another possibility. Maybe you are not behind. Maybe you are simply on a different path. Sometimes feeling lost happens because the life you are trying to build was designed around an older version of yourself. Maybe when you were younger, you believed success meant having a certain career. Maybe you thought you would be married by a certain age. Maybe you imagined living somewhere specific. Maybe you believed you would have everything sorted out by 30. And now you are discovering that some of those expectations were never really yours. They came from family, from culture, from friends, from things you saw growing up, from the quiet pressure to become someone who looked successful from the outside. Realizing that can be uncomfortable, but it can also be incredibly freeing. Imagine a pair of shoes you loved when you were younger. They once fit perfectly. You could walk comfortably in them. But eventually, you grew. The shoes did not become bad. They simply stopped fitting the person you had become. Sometimes our old dreams are like that. They were right for who we were at the time. But growing changes us, and there is nothing wrong with admitting that something you once wanted no longer feels right. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to choose differently. You are allowed to discover that the life you imagined at 18 is not the life you want at 30. That does not mean you wasted those years. It means you learned something about yourself. We often talk about growth as though it should feel exciting, but sometimes growth feels like confusion. Sometimes it feels like losing certainty. Sometimes it feels like standing in an empty room after removing everything that no longer belongs there. For a while, the room looks bare. You do not know what will replace it, but that does not mean the room will stay empty. You are making space, and making space can feel uncomfortable. There is also something worth remembering about the pressure to have a plan. We live in a culture that loves certainty, 5-year plans, career goals, life milestones, perfect timelines, clear answers. But human beings do not always develop according to a schedule. Life is rarely a straight line. You can make a plan and discover something completely different. You can work toward one career and realize you want another. You can spend years believing you want something and then understand that it was never truly yours. You can start again. You can change direction. You can take longer than expected. None of that makes your life less meaningful. Nature does not seem embarrassed by slow growth. A tree does not apologize because it is not fully grown yet. A river does not panic because it has not reached the ocean. The moon does not rush through the night because it is worried about falling behind. Everything has its own rhythm. Perhaps you are allowed to have one too. Maybe your life does not need to move according to someone else's clock. Maybe 30 is not a deadline. Maybe 35 is not a deadline. Maybe 40 is not a deadline. There are no universal dates by which you are required to have your life completely understood. Your timeline belongs to you. And perhaps the fact that you are questioning your direction means something important. It means you care. You care about the life you are creating. You care about whether your choices feel meaningful. You care about becoming a person you respect. Someone who has stopped caring would not spend so much time wondering whether they are living the right life. So perhaps the uncertainty deserves a little more compassion. Instead of asking, "What is wrong with me?" maybe you can ask, "What is this season trying to show me?" Maybe you are discovering what you no longer want. Maybe you are learning what matters. Maybe you are becoming more honest about your needs. Maybe you are finally questioning expectations you accepted without ever choosing them. These questions can be uncomfortable, but they can also lead you somewhere more authentic. You do not need to know the entire destination. Think about walking at night with only a small light in front of you. You may not be able to see the entire road, but you can see enough for the next few steps. That is often all life asks of us. Not the next 10 years, not the entire future, just the next step. Maybe your next step is applying for something you have been afraid to pursue. Maybe it is having an honest conversation. Maybe it is learning something new. Maybe it is finally admitting that you are unhappy with something. Maybe it is making a small change to your routine. And maybe your next step is doing absolutely nothing tonight. Maybe you need sleep. Maybe you need a quiet evening without trying to improve yourself. Rest is not a failure of progress. You do not have to earn the right to stop. Sometimes you move forward by allowing yourself to recover. So if your mind keeps telling you that everyone else is ahead, try not to believe it immediately. You do not know what their lives actually feel like. You know what they choose to show. And even more importantly, you do not need their timeline to validate your own. Your life does not become less valuable because someone reached a milestone before you. Their success does not take anything away from your possibility. There is room for different beginnings, different endings, different careers, different relationships, different versions of success. Some people find their direction early. Others discover it after years of searching. Some people build one life and stay with it. Others rebuild several times. Neither is automatically better. A meaningful life does not have to look impressive from a distance. Sometimes it is simply a life that feels honest when you are living it. And perhaps one day, you will look back at this period differently. You may realize that this confusing season was not wasted time. It was preparation. You were learning how to listen to yourself. You were separating your own desires from other people's expectations. You were becoming more comfortable with uncertainty. You were learning that changing direction does not mean losing yourself. It can mean finding yourself. So you do not need to rush through this part. You do not need to pretend you have everything under control. You do not need to create a perfect answer tonight. You are allowed to be somewhere in between the person you were and the person you are becoming. There is nothing wrong with being unfinished. A book does not become meaningless because you have not reached the final chapter. A garden does not fail because it is between seasons. A painting can be beautiful while it is still being created, and your life can have value while you are still figuring it out. So tonight, if you have been carrying that quiet fear that you are falling behind, take a moment to let your shoulders relax. Take a slow breath. You do not need to solve your entire life before you sleep. You are here. You are still trying. You are still learning. You are still becoming. That counts for something, more than you may realize. Maybe tomorrow will bring another question. Maybe it will bring a small opportunity. Maybe it will simply be another ordinary day. Whatever comes, you do not need to know exactly where it will lead. You can meet it one day at a time, one decision at a time, one small step at a time. And if you are currently standing in that uncertain space between who you were and who you are becoming, try to be gentle with yourself there. You are not late. You are not broken. You are not failing because your path looks different. You are living a life that is still unfolding. And unfinished does not mean unsuccessful. Sometimes the most important chapter begins precisely when you thought you were lost. So wherever you are tonight, let yourself breathe. Let yourself be uncertain. Let yourself take your time. You do not have to have your whole life figured out to deserve peace today. You only have to be here. And for tonight, that is enough. Wherever you are right now, I'm glad you made it here. Thank you for listening, liking, and commenting. Please share Soul Planet with someone who you think may need it.